The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, Adventures South of the Equator, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Vladimir Suchi's latest Underwater Cities. Then the Dukes play some catch-up on their Dukes double takes with a quadruple take featuring Rising Sun and Heaven and Ale. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 199, Under the Influence. Under the Influence, Alex. Are you drinking a beer right now?
Under the influence. No, I'm not. I have not had a beer tonight. I am very sober. Just got off work a little bit ago. I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling refreshed. I got back from a week in Peru where I magically went from a 20-something to a 30-something.
Wow. Hold on one sec, Alex. Real quick, episode 199 by Joe Rackstad. He named the title.
Uh-huh.
We get help naming all the titles over on Board Game Geek, our Dukes on Deck forum posts that we do, Guild number 2008. We'll give you the rest of the runners-up, plus last episode's runners-up at the end of the episode. So anyway, Alex, you were saying, how you doing?
You're so rusty, Sean.
No, you started talking about how you're doing without me finishing. I just asked you a quick question. I just said,
okay,
are you under the influence?
Uh-huh.
See,
and then I just took it away from you.
Well, right, but we didn't give credit to the titler of the episode.
Look, everyone knows Joe is my favorite person on the guild.
Okay. Well, anyway, good job, Joe, for Under the Influence. Of course, we're talking about a game that takes place under the sea, underwater cities, and Heaven and Ale has certainly some intoxicating implications.
Yep, definitely. And then I think there's an influence track in Rising Sun, isn't there?
There is an influence track. Yeah.
Hey, it works on all three counts. Nice job, Joe.
And you could even say that for a good stretch of time, large portions of the Pacific were under the influence of the Japanese Empire.
Can I say, when I do have a kid, someday, Joe Rackstad will be that kid's godfather.
Wait. I thought you didn't want to have kids.
I do want to have kids. What are you talking about?
When did this happen?
This has always been the case since you have known me. Absolutely always been the case.
So I can't wait for you to have a child so I can bang its head into the ceiling.
Hey, you bang one kid's head into the ceiling one time, and all of a sudden you're Mr. Bad Guy.
Yeah, we had Child Protective Services called and everything.
You didn't have to do any of that.
Well, maybe not. So, Alex, happy 30th birthday.
Thank you.
You old millennial, you.
It's so weird. It's so weird being so old.
It sure is. So
I'm so creaky now.
You find the joints are starting to hurt a little bit more, and
just a little bit. Yeah, I was hiking a good amount on this trip, and yeah, my knee got to me pretty quickly, a little more quickly than usual. So I don't know. I was feeling it.
Do you know what the best part about going to Peru, I imagine, would be?
What's that?
The frequency in normal conversations in which you can just say Machu Picchu. You know what I mean? So
that's a fine thing, but I will say this. North of Cusco, there's a set of ruins which are spelled Sacsuayhuaman. And it's pronounced Sacsayhuaman.
All right.
Dead serious.
I believe you.
Dead serious. So that's the best part, actually. And ceviche. Ceviche is really tasty.
Yeah, I bet. So,
Sean, let's talk about some games. It's been a long time.
Has it? I suppose it has, right? I think we had a little bit of a delay in episodes dropping. So you know what? Real quick, Alex, I've been having some technical difficulties, and it's culminated in my main computer that I use for editing crapping out, which is bad. So remember Anachrony?
Mm-hmm.
And how you could send resources back in time to help yourself?
I mean, if I remember, you mean I've never played it.
Oh, you didn't play Anachrony? Was that when you were gone?
Yeah.
Oh. So here's what I need. So right now, everyone listening to the podcast, as it's airing, as it's dropping, I need you to send back good vibes back in time so that I can get the computer back up and running before I have to edit this podcast.
Hooray!
Did everyone do that?
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, no, you can't do it now because you got to send it from the future. We're in the present
but
now.
when they're listening to it, they'll hear me doing it, and then they'll want to do it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Are you doing something? Because they have to listen to you doing something.
No, I'm doing. Yeah. Look, I said I was doing it. I don't know how else I can prove it. Do you want me to do it like a om kind of thing? Okay.
I don't know, something. Anyway.
I guess my word's just not good enough.
Let's talk about some games. Alex, why don't you talk about 2 games that I've already talked about on the show?
No, I don't want to do that, Sean. I'm gonna talk about 2 games from my perspective.
Oh.
That I have yet to talk about on the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just because I beat you to the punch on stuff all the time.
Yeah, and then I don't talk about it because I'm considerate like that.
But also because we play different things a lot of the time.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Man. All right, look.
I'm making up for lost time, Alex.
Fair enough. So, Tokyo Highway. This is one that, Sean, how long ago did you talk about this game?
A month ago?
Month ago.
Maybe 2 or 3 episodes.
Okay.
It's great, right?
Well, I played Tokyo Highway. I played it a couple of times. I played it once with just myself and Abby. Abby, my girlfriend, for reference, for folks who are confused without that moniker being thrown in. And then also played a 3-player game of it at Monochromatic Wolf Game Night. And here's the thing with this game. Aesthetically, it is absolutely stunning. For folks who don't know, this is a dexterity game. It's a game where you're building highways in Tokyo, you're overlapping roads. It's basically popsicle sticks and little wooden circles, and you're building the popsicle sticks in between it. The highway has to go up or down typically. You can split it off in different directions. Whenever you cross someone else's road, you can place one of your cars. That's all well and good. In a couple of plays of this, Sean, I'm still not sure I'm playing with the proper rules.
Okay.
Which is weird because it seems like the simplest game. It doesn't seem like there should be that many rules. I'm still not sure I'm playing this thing correctly. And if I am playing it correctly, because this is a dexterity game where you're building something that might fall down, in most of those dexterity games, the person who knocks it down either has to pay a pretty severe penalty, or the game is just over right then and there, right? Rhino Hero and Jenga being 2 good examples of that. In this one, when you knock stuff over in the game, when you knock down that highway that you've built, you got to rebuild it. The game continues. It doesn't stop there. You pay a penalty of some sort, but you have to rebuild everything and go from there. Now, sometimes that's fine if a couple of little things get knocked down. Sometimes, though, if a couple of, or if the whole thing collapses, if you get this massive structural collapse, then you got problems, and then basically the game is over, even if it's not actually over. That was my experience in the 3-player game of this. It was also my experience in one of the 2-player plays of this I had. And man, oh man, does it look gorgeous. It photographs well. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't know about this one. Hey, Sean, I don't remember what you thought about this game. Did you like it?
I liked it quite a bit. I think you just don't like light games. You know what I mean? There's not enough meat there for you because of your preferred tastes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not heavy enough for me.
Yeah.
Look, to me, there's more interesting dexterity games out there. Again, it's not the look of it so much as the game with this one. It looks great. There's sort of a cool factor to it. It has amazing table presence, but ultimately it just kind of fell flat. So that's Tokyo Highway. Over to you, Sean.
Okay, so I just want to talk real quick about a little game called Magic the Gathering. First mention.
Okay. I guess we're doing that now.
I'm taking it from you, Alex. First mention is now my thing. So Nick and I have been building these pauper decks. Have I talked about this?
Yes.
I have.
Yep.
So we actually started the process. We spent like 4 hours in this comic shop one day going through literally like 60 boxes of Magic cards looking for the pauper decks. I then take the cards that we find and I give them to my secretary to catalog them to see what we have left to get. And then today we just did our order to get the missing cards. So these are all common cards. We're building the top 8 pauper decks that were in a recent Magic tournament, which is pretty interesting. And then we played some Commander. In fact, I've been playing a lot of Commander, Alex. Let me ask you something real quick before I talk about my actual gameplay.
Uh-huh.
What would it take? And we kind of talked about this, but what if we did some sort of YouTube of you and I playing Magic online, Magic Arena online?
Uh-huh. What would it take for me to do that?
Well, I mean, would you do that?
No.
Oh. Well, at one point when I asked you to play Arena, you were like, yeah, I might try it.
I might try it maybe, but it seems like both you and my boss have gotten obsessed. Also, I haven't played Magic the Gathering in a very long time. I have a feeling I'd get very embarrassed in that kind of a situation.
No, it'd be a teaching game. It's fine.
Oh, okay, a teaching game. Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
just like you teach Jake Keyforge.
I taught him good, didn't I?
Jake from Draft Mechanic.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to a previous episode to hear about how Alex is a main teacher of collectible card games. I guess it's not collectible card.
Hey, not always.
Did you listen to the Draft Mechanic episode where they did their 6-pack review of Keyforge?
I absolutely listened to it. Oh, I definitely did. Yeah. Anyway. Hey, why don't you talk about an actual board game?
Okay. You play Magic on a table, which is a type of board.
Hey, why don't you talk about an actual board game?
You know, I forgot to mention at Arizona Game Fair a couple weeks ago, I did get in a play of Railroad Inc., which is a cool little roll and write game published by Horrible Games, designed by Hjalmar Hack and Lorenzo Silva. Alex, have you played Railroad Inc.?
I have not.
It is really cool. So you each have this little grid that you're going to be writing on, and it's wet erase or dry erase markers, actually, dry erase. And
I prefer wet erase markers, actually.
well, there's pros and cons to each, and it depends on the situation and what you're going for. But anyway, so it's this grid, and different squares have different exit points for either roads or railroads. And every round, you're rolling these dice, which are going to give you different types of roads or rails or some combination of the two to draw onto your board. And the object here is to create as many connections from edge of map to edge of map as you can. There's some bonuses for having long routes. There are negative points for having connections that just don't go anywhere. Like you're in the middle of your map and there's just a road that just goes nowhere. So there's going to be negative points for that. That's it. There's really not much more to say about it rules-wise. It is a really cool experience. There's some interesting mitigation options where you have these special connections that you can draw a certain number of times a turn. It's just a pretty solid little roll and write. I don't think it's spectacular, didn't blow my mind, but it was still really good. Good enough that I would definitely pick up a copy, and I'll plan on doing that soon. But I think it was really solid. And I think if you're a roll and write fan, if you like route building, I think it's definitely gonna be in the sweet spot for you. So I think you'll like it, Alex, well enough. Again, nothing that was just like, oh my goodness, that just mind-blowing, but it was good. I liked it.
Okay. Hey, there's nothing wrong with good, Sean.
What did I spend more time talking about just now, Magic or Railroad Inc.?
Magic.
Okay. Anyway, that's Railroad Inc. Alex, back to you.
Hey, I got in a little game called Hardback. Now, Sean, I have not played Paperback, the predecessor to this, so I can't really speak much to the differences between Paperback and Hardback. Hardback was my first introduction into the back series. I don't know where they'd go from here. Soft cover? Is that the next one?
Sure, why not?
Softback?
Wait, isn't that just Paperback?
I mean, I guess, but I feel like if they want to have another sequel, what do they name it?
I don't know, Alex. I don't know.
Well, hey, that was me just kind of killing time until I could double-check the publisher. Fowers Games put this one out, designed by Jeff Beck and Tim Fowers. And, Sean, I got to tell you, I had a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, it's solid.
It's really good. So this is, for folks who don't know, it is a deck-building spelling game, but a game where, unlike a lot of games where the better word you spell, right, the better you do. So you end up spelling an 8-letter word or a word with a whole bunch of X's and Z's, you might end up doing amazingly. In this one, because of the way different abilities trigger, you might score amazingly with just a little 4-letter dinky word without any special letters in it, because there are these different book types, and they will usually get you something when you include them in a word, and if you include them in a word that has another book of that same type, you'll get another little extra bonus on top of that. So it encourages you to build in interesting ways. Similar to Star Realms, where you might have bases, there are some letters that you might use in a word that will stay out round to round, and if someone else uses it in one of their words, then that letter will go away. If they don't, it stays out on the table, and you get some benefit from it on your turn if you can, again, throw it in. I think you just get it, period. I don't think you even have to use it in a word from then on. So really, really satisfying deck building and handles a word game in a way that makes it so you don't have to be a word expert in order to be really good at it. I really like this one a lot, to the point where I probably need to go look into purchasing it. I think it's actually one I could play with Abby and she'd enjoy, because it has sort of if you're good at unscrambling things, unscrambling different letters in your hand, that works really well. It's forgiving in that you can play any card in hand face down. You don't get any benefit from the letter for doing that, but it gives you access to more and more words. I really, really dug this game, Sean. Now, I don't know how it differs from paperback. To you, which one's the better one, hardback or paperback?
Hardback. Hardback has a little bit more complexity. It has the bases. Oh, I forget what they are in terms of the theme, like why they stay out from round to round.
I don't know either. Yeah,
but no, there was a little bit more complexity here. Yeah, hardback easily is my pick among the two. I played it with Raquel and Mariah. Both of them really enjoyed it. In fact, I think for Mariah, deck building games are I think that's probably like her favorite mechanic, because she tends to like a lot of deck building games. So.
Have you played some baseball highlights with her? First mention?
Not, I already said second mention, Alex.
No, first mention of that game.
Yeah, but it's the second mention of first mention.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
It does. So from now on, we're going to race. It's going to be a race every episode for who mentions Magic or baseball highlights first.
I think you're going to win that race.
Why? How?
I don't know.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Magic the Gathering. First mention. This is Sean.
And Alex. Baseball Highlights 2045.
Second mention.
Yeah, all right. I get what you're saying. So, yeah, anyway, hardback. If you are a Star Realms fan, if you enjoy a little bit of deck building in your life, and you also like word games, hey, this is a pretty solid one. I really enjoyed it. So that is hardback. Back to you, Sean.
And by the way, Baseball Highlights is not a deck building game.
It's a game with deck building elements. We've gone over this so many times.
Yes. And confirmed by Mike himself.
Yes, so. I know. I don't disagree.
What's the sound of me patting myself on the back? Can everyone hear that out there?
I can't hear it.
Oh, because I'm not doing it.
Okay.
Anyway, so last night at Duke's Dice game night, by the way, crazy couple nights. Actually, last week was a little bit slow, just weird. Last night was super busy. The week before that, super busy. Pretty interesting. But anyway, I got to play Tybor the Builder from Lookout Spiel, and this is a small card game designed by Alexander Pfister and Dennis Rappel. And so think of like Oh My Goods, sort of. When I first opened the box, by the way, this is our buddy Matt from Wham. This was his copy. And when I first opened the box, kind of looked at it, I'm like, oh, it kind of looks like a little mix of Oh My Goods and Port Royal, both Alexander Pfister games, but it's really not. It's actually a drafting game, and each round, you're going to have a hand, I think, of 5 cards. You pick one, pass left, you play them simultaneously. There's a rotating turn order that's important for purchasing buildings out of the center tableau. But when you use the card that you drafted, you're going to do one of 3 things with it. Or actually, one of 3 things. You're either going to place it in your citizenry, which is kind of the top area above your little player card, and it's going to give you certain discounts on certain colors of buildings. It's also going to give you certain symbols, which are useful for endgame scoring. The second option is you can place it to the right, because all of these cards have a different work power. There's a little fist, which is its ability to build buildings, because then the third thing you can do is you can discard the card that you drafted to build a building from the center. And when you build a building, you apply any discount for people in your citizenry that apply to that color building, and then you have to discard enough of the workers that you've placed previously to build that building. And basically the cost of buildings go up every round, more or less. And so once you build that building, you put it in the left side of your tableau. It's going to be worth points at the end of the game. There might be some immediate effect, and there might be some other end game scoring where you're trying to do some sort of set collection or something. Now, once everyone's done everything they need to do, every round it checks to see if at least one person has built a certain number of buildings. So first it's like 1, then it's 3, and then 5 and 7. If someone hasn't built that number of buildings, then the round doesn't progress, and you just kind of play that round again. You do that, go through all 4 rounds, and whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. Oh my goodness, this game was not good. It was it was it w- it was very fine, but maybe not very fine. It just wasn't particularly interesting. It took
Hmm.
certain had a certain feel of Oh My Goods, but whereas Oh My Goods is like a 5 or a 6 for me, this game is probably a 2 or a 3. It just wasn't great. You have a game like Port Royal, which is another one of his small card games, which has just a fantastic pressure luck element and set collection. Here, the set collection was fine, but the drafting was just kind of dull. It was kind of reminiscent of Seven Wonders, how you have different uses. Actually, I guess Seven Wonders Duel, where you have different uses for the cards. It was just really a dull game, and it was kind of disappointing. I guess maybe now I'm just not an Alexander Pfister fan, because the last two Pfister games I've played, not a fan of. Oh, you know what, Alex? Real quick,
Hmm.
any thoughts on Tybor the Builder?
No, it's interesting to hear that that's disappointing. I honestly hadn't heard much about the game, period.
Yeah,
It was sort of vaguely recalled that it's a game, but it's just not one I'd heard a bunch about.
it's a strong pass for me. But here's what I will say: a couple weeks ago, after our review of Blackout Hong Kong, I did get a play-in of Mombasa, another play-in of Mombasa, a game that I really enjoyed, that I said was more than likely a 6 for me. And I had compared Blackout Hong Kong to Mombasa, saying that I think that there's a lot of shared elements there. Mombasa just does it better. And yeah, after this additional play of Mombasa, oh man, it is super good. It is so good. It is definitely a 6. It is just such a solid game. Yeah, Mombasa's good.
I'd be willing to try that at some point.
I think you'd like Mombasa. It's more complex than Blackout, but it's definitely worth it. So anyway, Tybor the Builder. My recommendation is a pretty hard pass, which is sad because I like Alexander Pfister's small card games.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to do it for games we have played. Let's head on over to the news desk. All right, first up in news, in the long time we have been away, some Golden Geek Awards were handed out. And some surprises, some not surprises. Let's kind of do a big, brief overview. Root, the heavy hitter of the year, makes sense that thing won 4 awards, including Game of the Year. What was interesting is it didn't win for strategy game. It was the runner-up in strategy. Brass Birmingham won in strategy. The Mind, which so many people want to say is not a game, has 3 Golden Geek Awards, so take that. It won for Best Card Game and Best Cooperative, and one other one that I'm forgetting at the moment.
Did you hear our gameplay experience of The Mind that we had at Arizona Game Fair?
So, embarrassingly enough, I have not listened to that most recent episode.
Oh, I didn't think you would have, but yeah, we had a lot of fun with The Mind at Arizona Game Fair.
Yeah, it's an amazing game. By the way, I brought it with me on the trip to Peru and played games of it during the trip to Peru. It's fantastic. Love that game. It's amazing. It won 3 awards. Gancho and Clever won 2 awards. One for Best Solo Game and then one for Best App, interestingly enough. Keyforge won Best 2-Player Game of the Year. Quacks of Quedlinburg, Best Family Game of the Year. And Best Podcast. Congratulations to the fine folks over at Ludology.
Woot,
Jeff
woot.
Engelstein, Gil Hova, bringing home some hardware.
Can I say something about Keyforge real quick?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't like Keyforge.
What?
Yeah, I don't like Keyforge.
Oh, well, that changed quickly.
Yeah, no, it really did.
Okay.
So I'm probably going to buy like 1 or 2 decks when the new set comes out because it's relatively small investments. But yeah, I don't think I like Keyforge anymore.
All right, well, breaking news. Sean doesn't like Keyforge anymore.
Well, I'm just saying. I think I like Magic better.
Now, I will say, my boss, who is also a big Magic fan, did at one point, at the end of a game we had played, he had lost in exasperating fashion against, of course, Smithison, the constantly immovable. He called it Magic for Dummies. So, yeah, there you go. I guess it makes sense that your opinion fits in line with his.
I didn't say that.
All right. Second place, by the way, in podcasts went to Heavy Cardboard. They may very well win next year. And then our friends over at Blue Peg, Pink Peg, took home the 3rd spot, second runner-up.
Yeah, congrats.
All worthy podcasts. Congrats to the folks at Ludology.
Absolutely.
Next up, a couple of video game board game crossovers, both from CMON, one of which had been announced, one of which had not, I don't believe. God of War, the card game. Now, Sean, before I dive into this one, have you played any of the God of War games?
I have not, and I'm not sure why. I have always meant to, and then I just never got around to it.
I have not either. I think I briefly may have played part of a level. I just haven't. I own a Nintendo Switch. I don't own any systems that really are capable of God of War. I certainly haven't played the newest one. So, yeah, I can't speak much to the story about this, but this is a card game. It's going to be coming out Q3. They have quest cards that are set up in different mosaics. They kind of reflect different characters and monsters that you'll find in God of War. If you complete certain quests, they'll grant you ongoing bonuses. Uncompleted quests, though, if you leave them around for too long, can create problems and be bad, very bad. So that one's not going to Kickstarter. That's a straight retail release Q3. Bloodborne, on the other hand, is one that is coming to Kickstarter actually fairly soon. I believe by the time you hear this, it will either be about to launch or will have just launched. And this is, again, also based off of a video game license. Have you played this video game, Sean?
Nope.
Nope.
Have you?
Me either.
Oh, it's so glad we're talking about these. We have so much insight to add into this discussion.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, look, I will say as someone who just had a Kickstarter campaign wrap up, we were not sure when this particular campaign, Bloodborne, was going to launch, but there was a little bit of concern that it might launch at an inopportune time. Luckily, that wasn't the case. It's launching this coming week. Just saying. It's an Eric Lang game, though, Sean, which may be right up your alley, co-designed with Michael Chenal. It's a game, I think it's an adventure setting game as best as I can tell. There's a design diary online if you want to read all about it, but per Sean, I guess we're just going to jump right on ahead to our Kickstarter of the week. And this is one, Sean, that you were very excited about looking at ahead of the show. Terraforming Mars Turmoil.
Aren't you super glad that this didn't launch when you guys were up and running?
Nope, doesn't matter.
Oh.
I mean,
so you were worried about Bloodborne, but you wouldn't have been worried about Terraforming Mars?
Here's why. CMON, so we were trying to do a minis game. Again, I'm not trying to plug anything. We're not currently live, so hope no one gets too upset. But Tsukiyumi, Full Moon Down, it's a minis game. And we were worried that another large minis campaign running at the same time might have drawn attention, especially because those tend to be bigger budget games. You never know. So there was a little mild internal concern, but you kind of got to run your own race. So no, Terraforming Mars, it's a different audience, I think, than the one that we were trying to hit with this one. So no, wasn't super concerned, but
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, Terraforming Mars Turmoil, this is a really interesting campaign because obviously it's for an expansion, but there's also pledges that can get you, there's a $139 all-in expansion that gets you the base game, gets you, I believe, all of the expansions, and it comes with new player boards, which have long been the big complaint about this game is you have these terrible player boards where you have all of these tokens tracking various things, and the slightest nudge just ruins it. In fact, anytime I play Terraforming Mars at a con, which is at least once a con, I always tell everyone, hey, take your badges off, because your badge, when you're leaning over the table, is gonna brush the cubes over, and you just lose everything that you're doing. So there have been tons of third-party inserts or overlays to better keep track of the cubes. And so they're like, hey, we should probably do something about this. And so there's this really cool dual layer board. What's really cool is that it also has spots for like 10s, 20s, 30s units for certain types of resources, because sometimes your money production could just be pretty crazy, or even other types of production could be pretty crazy. So it looks pretty cool that they're offering all these things. Now, as far as the expansion itself, the Turmoil expansion, you are vying for control of the Terraforming Council, and you're playing, or you're kind of maneuvering around these global events. And so there's things where you could possibly lose steps in your Terraform rating. You're sending delegates, it looks like, to vote on things, and you get certain bonuses. I couldn't quite tell a whole lot directly from the page, but it looks really cool. We were kind of talking offline, Alex, that People always complain about Star Wars Episode 1, about all the boring like Senate stuff, and that's the stuff I enjoyed the most. So this sounds pretty interesting to me.
Obviously, it sounds pretty interesting to a lot of people because this campaign is already closing in, as of the time of this recording, on $600,000, more than 13,000 backers. Huge campaign, not surprising. This is a game that feels like it's going to live forever in the hobby. I don't know if that's actually true, but there are just so many people that are so fanatical about this game that you can't ever see it ending. It'll probably end at some point, but I just don't know when. So
it comes out almost every single Dukes of Dice game night. Almost every single one. Wow. And I will say that 2 Wednesdays ago, I actually played Terraforming Mars with all of the expansions. If people recall from the last episode at Arizona Game Fair, I just played with the Prelude expansion, and I was lamenting that I hadn't played with all the other expansions, which I'd already purchased. But we played with everything. Colonies, Venus, everything. It's awesome. So
man, oh man, oh man. Well, cool.
When does this end, Alex?
It ends May 2nd, so not too terribly long after this episode drops. So you got some time, but you don't have a ton of time.
And it's just $34 plus shipping for the expansion, if that's all you need.
Yeah, that's it. Come on. Anyway, that's Terraforming Mars Turmoil, and that is your look at the news. So, Sean, I like recording the podcast with you, but man, it doesn't feel right if I'm not doing it at a proper table. Right now I'm sitting at this dinky square kitchen table, and it's kind of cramped. I don't feel like if I needed to roll dice, they just kind of clank around, and it just wouldn't be a satisfying experience. So I feel like I could use an upgrade.
Oh, well, perhaps a game topper from our good buddy Berkey would be the right solution to your particular problem, Alex.
Is that right? Well, good thing I actually already have one of those fine things.
Oh, perfect!
And really enjoy using it.
So is this a solution to a problem that you no longer have?
When I move in with my girlfriend Abby, it will be a problem I will no longer have because I'll bring this game topper over here, and then I'll have that ready to go either when I'm podcasting or chucking some dice or playing games or whatever else. It can convert the benign kitchen table into a fun gaming experience at a nice, affordable price. And if you order now, every single game topper comes with 5 pounds of Berkey jerky.
Ooh, does it really?
No, I actually don't think that's a deal.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't say that.
Would make me more likely to buy a second one, because that jerky, I can't get enough of that jerky in my life.
Mwah! Is all I have to say about Berkey's jerky.
Also, mwah! That's what I have to say about his game toppers. Berkey, you are a mwah kind of guy.
Be sure to check out Game Toppers over at GameToppersLLC.com. So, Alex, do you recall playing the multiplayer worker placement game Yokohama by our fine sponsors over at Tasty Minstrel Games?
Boy, it was so long ago, and yeah, of course I remember. It was an awesome game, Sean. An amazing game.
Yeah, we both enjoyed it quite a bit. So I was excited to hear that Yokohama Duel, which is all the rage nowadays, take an awesome game and then put Duel on it, and now you've got a sweet 2-player game. And I think that's what's going to happen here, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, this looks great.
So this will be coming to Kickstarter in late January of this year, so keep your eyes out for that. Yokohama Duel is a 2-player worker placement game that lasts 4 rounds, with each player taking 4 turns each round. The game includes 10 different areas, and each area can be used only once each round. Workers have certain powers, but they can only be used by people with low power. To gain victory points, players must complete the order form, build shops and trading houses, clear custom goods, and dedicate the church. At the end of the game, whichever player has more points is the winner.
So if you fancy yourself a merchant, you might want to go prepare some funds to invest in a copy of Yokohama Duel, coming soon from Tasty Minstrel Games. Sean, I have so thoroughly mastered the game of Onitama. I can beat all challengers, I cannot be stopped even by you,
even by death itself. But is there anything left for me to do in this game? I feel like I'm so good at it. I just need something more.
Well, Alex, I don't know, because you haven't yet seen my wind spirit.
Your wind spirit?
Yes, my wind spirit. I have a devastating wind spirit, Alex, that all should avoid.
Because the wind spirit gonna mess you up.
All of the New Mexican food, Alex, gives me a ferocious wind spirit.
Well, I don't think that kind of wind spirit is maybe as useful as you're thinking. The wind spirit that comes, though, in the new expansion for Onitama, Way of the Wind, can add some pretty interesting possibilities. It's an impassable piece on the board that can move using certain of the technique cards. Some of those cards will make it very, very, very tricky. You can't move into it, you can't move onto it, but it can move into you, and if it does, it switches places with your piece, and if it does that, it might put you in a pretty vulnerable position. So beware of the wind spirit in Onitama Way of the Wind, now available from fine retailers, from our partners at Arcane Wonders.
This week on the Dukes of Dice, we are heading under the water surface to magical, futuristic cities. It's a theme that might catch a lot of people's attention from a designer who's definitely starting to become better known in Vladimir Suchy. Does underwater cities live up to all of that promise, or does it sink well below the waves?
So Underwater Cities was released here in the US by Rio Grande Games, designed, as Alex said, by Vladimir Suchy, with art by Milan Vavron. This is, Alex, the next frontier. The Earth is overpopulated. The colonization of Mars is always 4 decades away. You think that's a dig, Alex, at Terraforming Mars?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll that's not the last you'll hear of Terraforming Mars in this review, I think.
Only one avenue is open for human expansion: the world under the sea. Players compete to build the best underwater nation, an archipelago of undersea cities connected by a network of transportation tunnels. Kelp farms and desalination plants will provide your people with food and water. Laboratories will give you the knowledge you need to run everything more efficiently. Perhaps you will even be able to build symbiotic cities, fully integrated with the underwater ecosystem. Beginning as a single city, you will expand your network, connecting it with the coastal metropolises. At a time when hunger has exceeded agricultural output and water shortages strain the bonds of the Federation of Nations, you will build a nation that is self-sustaining, perhaps even someday exporting your products to those who have been left ashore. That sounds pretty interesting. So as far as the gameplay and mechanics, how to play, I'm going to keep this relatively brief. You're playing over 3 eras, and each era there are 4 to 3 rounds of play. And in each one of those rounds, you are simply taking 3 actions. It's a worker placement game at its heart, but there's also some card play that you're hopefully trying to coordinate with your worker placement actions. So there are 3 different areas of worker placement. They're all color coordinated. And generally speaking, there are certain worker placement actions that are weaker, colors that are weaker than others. But the offset to that is that the corresponding card play for that weaker color is generally stronger, which is an interesting dynamic. But you'll place workers out to get resources like kelp, like plasteel science, which you're going to need to do various things. You'll take actions to build new cities on your individual player board. You'll take actions to build tunnels to connect those cities. You'll take actions to upgrade those cities, not upgrade the cities rather, but to build different types of buildings like the desalination plants and research labs, and then upgrade those so they can get some better output. And then there's so as I said, there's some card play that you will do with this game, because basically every time you take an action, you play a card from your hand. Now, if the card color matches the action color that you're doing, you're going to get to use that card benefit. And so there's some interesting ways that you'll play these cards. Some of them will get played out in front of you, and they'll have some sort of ongoing benefit. Some of them will be these repeatable bonus actions that you get, and some of them will just have maybe an immediate effect, and then others finally may just have an end-game scoring effect. But really, it's about synergizing doing both those abilities, the worker action and then also the card play action. at the end of all of the rounds in a given era, you're going to produce for all your cities, all of the buildings that you've produced, and it's going to produce victory points or different types of resources, which you're going to use as a jumping off point for the next round. Each round, there are new sets of cards that get more powerful as the game goes on. And there's also some actions where you're kind of scrambling for more end game scoring points because there's some important ones there in the center. I'm leaving out a ton, and we might kind of flush it out a bit more as we discuss the rules, but going in any deeper at this point is probably counterproductive. So, Alex, okay, so our new format, which you shanghaied me.
I like this format.
You shanghaied me into, Alex.
It's a good format.
So knowing this was going to be kind of a heavier game, which is not necessarily your cup of tea, what were your expectations about this game?
So, Sean, let me tell you a story. So, it was a very busy week leading up to heading out of the country for Peru.
Oh, boy.
And I thought I'd have time during the Kickstarter to get this played, and then I didn't. And then I was in Peru for a week, and then I came back this week, and I wasn't able to get it played on Tuesday because I went to a hockey game, and then, no, I'm just kidding, I played it.
I'm like,
did I have you for a second there?
Yeah, he did this. This is really what happened. He really did this. Yeah,
I played it. I played it. Don't worry. Just in the nick of time, and not a ton.
That would all make sense, right?
Yeah, it would all make sense. So, no, all of the things I just said were true, but I did in fact play this. And Sean, this may come as a surprise, but I had to teach this game.
Oh my goodness.
I had to learn and teach this game.
Oh man.
Now, ended up playing this one at Jamie Stegmeyer's. So we want to talk expectations, kind of fears, thoughts, what we're thinking going in.
I don't know. This is your thing here.
Yeah, no. So it's kind of, instead of giving away the whole review, it's sort of what did I think this was going to be? I had heard nothing but good things, primarily from other folks. I think one or both of the Wham boys. Some folks in the Duchy had been calling it possibly their game of the year. I had really good experience with Vladimir Suchi's previous title that I'd played, Pulsar 2849. Really, really enjoyed that one. So even though I knew it was going to be a heftier experience, I was feeling optimistic that I would really enjoy this, that this one could be a really solid, really fun kind of game, and it would be one that, in spite of its complexity, would really click with me. That was my expectation going in. I started watching some how to play videos. I had a hard time kind of grokking it, but eventually I was able to wrap my head around it and get it to the table. In any case, that was my expectation going in. Sean, before you played this for the first time, what was your expectation of this game?
So Rory had played this at BGG-Con before it had any sort of wide US distribution, and he enjoyed it so much that he ordered in a copy from Europe about 2 months ago. So we've had it here in the US, or access to it in the US here, a little bit longer than most have. And he was like, "Man, you're really gonna enjoy this. It's really up your wheelhouse." And in your wheelhouse, up your wheelhouse, in your wheelhouse, doesn't matter.
In your wheelhouse,
and,
I think.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, let's give it a shot. And it looked cool. And as I was being taught the game, I'm trying to remember who taught me. Might have been Eugene. He's kind of been the Albuquerque Duchy rules guru. I mean, he always has been, but more so recently. I think it was him. But as he's teaching me the game, I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds really good. So even in that rules teach, I'm just like, I think I'm gonna like this. And there's certain games that, as someone's teaching you, you're almost like 3 or 4 steps ahead in what they're teaching you. Like, it's just all kind of clicking and you see where it's going. That's kind of where I was with this game as it was being taught to me. And whenever that's the case, that's usually an indication that I'm going to enjoy it, because it just sort of makes sense to me. And this game definitely just sort of made sense to me. I've yet to win, which is very frustrating, but I've had good showings. And one of the things that everyone has said, because it's been highly praised here at Empire, everyone has said that even when they don't win, the enjoyment of just kind of going through the motions and the enjoyment of the engine building, because there's some significant engine building in this game, is just really enjoyable. And, I think we kind of talk about, did we talk about board games, or is it more a Magic thing, where you're just kind of dirtling? We talked about dirtling, Alex. Do you know what it is to dirtle? I dirtle, you dirtle, he, she, it dirtles. So it's just kind of where you're just doing stuff, and it may or may not be like getting you towards a goal, but it feels like you're doing some fun stuff, and maybe it has some payoff. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, I get the term now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, dirtling. Magic, I like to dirtle. Then all of a sudden, I've got infinite plant tokens that swing for 1 damage each. And anyway.
Oh man, infinite plant tokens.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doesn't that sound fun?
That's a lot of plant tokens.
Infinite, an infinite number. So yeah, so my expectations were high, and I'm always a little wary when my expectations are high, because then the higher they are, the farther they fall, I suppose. So that's where I was. So Alex, I'm curious, since you had to learn this and teach this, what did you think of the rulebook?
It's all there.
That's good.
It's all in the rulebook.
Yeah, that's good.
All the rules that you need are present. I was not a big fan of how this thing was organized. It was rough. I mean, I had to keep flipping back and forth and referencing different things, and it just felt all over the place in terms of learning this. And if I hadn't had the addition of, say, watching a video and having a good sense of how the game might work otherwise, it could have been even more painful. And so, yeah, not super stoked with that rule book, really. Again, it's all there. There's some nice iconography keys. They do a great job of explaining what the special tiles mean and special actions mean. But they could have done a better job with this one, I think.
And just give a shout out, you watched Paul Grogan's gaming rules video, correct?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, the rulebook is pretty rough. It's pretty dense. And it's long. It's pretty detailed. So it's interesting when you say it's all there. Because yeah, it is all there. But like I said, it's pretty dense.
It's just weirdly organized when you're trying to find little things about how you set up different rounds and in between eras. You can find it, but it takes longer than it should and is not organized in a way where it makes as much sense as it should, at least for me.
Sure. So as far as the art and components, art-wise, graphic design, what'd you think?
Okay. What do we start? You want to start with art, or do you want to start with the components? Because I think they're different thoughts with both of these.
Yeah, art. I said art and graphic design.
Okay, art and graphic design. I think overall the iconography served the game pretty well. When you understand the language of this game, it's pretty consistent. You understand what it means. It does a good job of laying out what can oftentimes be complicated actions. I like how on the cards it not only has the iconography but has an explanation at the bottom of the card, listing exactly what that card does. It really helps make what could be even more complicated iconography much easier to parse and understand and learn. And it doesn't take long until you're speaking the language of this game and being aware of it. So I enjoyed that part of things. I like the graphic design of things well enough, and art-wise, I certainly didn't have any big issues with it. So I think the overall look of this game was just fine. It didn't blow me out of the water, but I actually like the art style and look and feel of this. I like some of the other subtle touches too. There's one of the so you start the game with a personal assistant action card, and I like how one of them is a dolphin for one of the different player colors. I don't know. I just enjoyed that little touch. So, what about you, Sean? One
of them is also an X-wing pilot, apparently.
Yes, definitely looks like an X-wing pilot.
They just look like an X-wing pilot. Yeah, no, I think it looks good. What's really nice is that the art is consistent. There's a consistent art theme.
Oh, I wonder what you're referring to there.
Well, and it's interesting because you already kind of made a slight Terraforming Mars comparison in that there's both the iconography and text, just like Terraforming Mars does. But yeah, so that's a complaint of Terraforming Mars, that the art direction is, some of them are pictures, some of them are clip art, some of them are, original drawings or paintings or whatever. But no, I think this looks good, and I think it has relatively decent table presence. There's a main board where all of the workers are, but then everyone has their own individual player board that's going to be their network of cities. And it all looks good on the table, and that kind of goes into components, which is what we'll talk about next. And there are a lot of really good things this game does in terms of components, and then there's some odd things. So here's probably one of my biggest pet peeves. The main resource tokens. They give you a bunch of singles, and then they give you sets of 3, which are basically, it looks like you have 3 individuals just kind of sitting on top of each other in kind of a splayed out triangle, if that makes sense. And it's really hard to distinguish between the two of them if they're all kind of clumped together, if that makes sense. That was a little.
I can see that. I can see that.
But then this game also suffers from a similar problem to Terraforming Mars in that your individual player board, it has specific spots for these half dome cities, which are these nice little plastic components that are your domed underwater cities. And then it's got spots for the tunnels, and then it has little spots for the cylindrical, different colored buildings. But they can get knocked around. And so we had our buddy Jared here. He actually, with his laser cutter, he designed up some plexiglass inserts, which are fantastic, except that the only problem is the boards are double-sided. And so everybody has the same board on one side, but then they're all asymmetric on the other side. So we couldn't quite deal with that. So that's a little bit problematic, and it's kind of annoying when you upgrade one of your buildings that accompany the cities. You just put a second little cylinder on top, and they kind of knock over easily. Like it should almost be like a little concave on the bottom and convex on the top, so they kind of fit together. I'm sure that would have been more expensive in terms of production, but it's easy for them to get knocked over, easy for them to fall off. So those would be my main issues with the components. But overall, it's solid.
I wholeheartedly agree that the game suffers from the problem of you might knock stuff over. Now, unlike Terraforming Mars, it's most of the time should be reasonably easy to get all of that stuff back where it needs to go. It's not that hard. I bumped my board a couple of times, but I never bumped it in such a way where it was hard to know where things should go. So that was a problem. I like the domes. I think the domes are really nice for the cities. I like that touch as a component. I agree with you that the stacking buildings should have stacked better. I don't know if you've ever run into this, but we ran out of kelp buildings in my game, and once enough things were upgraded. So it was a 4-player game, so full count. But yeah, we ran out of kelp buildings and had to basically substitute under one of mine a different building. My biggest issue with this is some of the player aid materials are basically on what feels like flyer paper. It feels like the kind of things I might get to make like a cheap flyer that I was going to hand out or leave at a restaurant counter. It does not feel remotely durable.
For Alex's band? What's the name of your band, Alex?
Yeah, I don't have a band. I used to play piano back in the day.
What's the name of your piano band, Alex?
Alex's Piano Band. We're not very good at names. Yeah, that's why we have people name our episodes.
So that's the subtitle. Alex's Piano Band, : we're not very good at names.
Yeah, we're not very good at naming names. And we require anyone introducing us to say the whole thing before we come out. So watch out, Ben Folds. Here I come. So I thought some of those components especially were pretty chintzy. You put that thing on even a card, even on a standard nice linen finish card, that would have been a million times better than the actual resulting thing that came out of it. So I wasn't a fan of that, and I also wasn't a fan of some of the board layout things. They're trying to cram a lot of things into one board, but there's that one action where you can copy another action slot that someone else has used, and they have a little separate tile for that sits on that space. I don't know why they didn't have that just baked into the board and had a little space where you could place your action slot either on top or below or whatever else. I think that would have worked. That would have worked just fine instead of this extra little weird component to kind of take with you and make things a little bit more fiddly on the setup and breakdown. So
it's for player count. You use it in 4 players versus 3 players.
Right, I know that.
Oh.
But you could print it on the board with, say, like a 4-player indication.
Okay.
Anyway.
I will say, too, the workers were annoying.
Oh, yeah, the little action tiles.
You get these 3 little flat rectangles. I don't know. I'd like a little submarine or a little dude or dudette in a little scuba gear or something.
Functional but not exciting, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, but overall, I mean, do you think it has good table presence?
I do think it has good table presence, especially with these different cities you're building. It is a table hog. It takes up a good chunk of space. Not as much as some games I've seen, but certainly enough to be noticeable. So
yeah. So what are your thoughts on gameplay then, Alex?
Okay. So there's some things that are really intriguing, right? You play 30 turns in a game. If you can match the actions based on the cards in your hand, that can be potentially really cool. It's hard on your first play to know exactly what makes sense to do. You sort of get a sense that the objective is build stuff, but beyond that, it's hard to say exactly what you should be doing or not doing, right? There's nothing that kind of guides you super clearly. So I found that gameplay flowed really well. The turns moved pretty quickly. You were able to kind of move from one action to the next pretty well. So yeah, it handled it. I'm trying to think of. I got an overall very good vibe from some of that. I'm having a hard time articulating this, Sean. Help me out here.
It's great.
For you, it's great. Okay. Well, what makes it great? And also, why do I keep mentally comparing this to Terraforming Mars? Because if I think about it logically, there's some elements where it's in no way at all similar to Terraforming Mars.
Right. No, you're right. It's I compared to Terraforming Mars in certain respects in terms of a general feel. There's a huge difference in terms of mechanics. So here are some differences, here are some comparisons. So differences, you're building on your own player board instead of building on a shared Mars. In Terraforming Mars, it is pretty much just about card play, although there are some cardless actions you can take, but for the most part, 90% of your gameplay is going to be centered around on purchasing cards and playing cards. Here, it's really worker placement, and you're trying to synergize bonuses with cards. In terms of similarity, there's a similar amount of engine building, tableau building, and then even just the building out, even though it's on your individual player board as opposed to the main board. There's some similarities there, but for me, it's just that there's a general feel of the games are similar, even though there's definitely a lot of differences. I would say that Terraforming Mars is way more accessible, especially just base game to base game. And I would say that Terraforming Mars is probably going to have by far the greater longevity, by far.
Yes, no doubt about it. Primarily because of the divergent number of strategies.
Right. And I think that maybe if this were to get a Terraforming Mars treatment with 1 billion expansions, maybe. But I don't know, and I don't think so, and I think that's okay. I think it does something different and something interesting. So what I really enjoyed about the gameplay was the tension of how am I conducting each of my turns, because I either A, need a really specific worker placement action, but maybe I don't have that color card that's going to synergize with it. I know that I'm going to play a card this turn and then draw a card. Maybe I'll draw the color I need. So there's that first kind of question, man, I really need to make sure that I can take this action before someone else does. Yes, there's a lesser version of this action I can take, but man, I really need this full action. So do I just take the action and I just throw a card away basically because it doesn't match, because I need to ensure that I do that? That's a really interesting point of tension for me. And then sometimes you're saying, I really need to play this card because this card's going to give me some amazing benefit that I'm going to be able to chain off of, but I'm not crazy about any of the particular worker actions that are available. Do I just take this lesser worker action I don't really care about, or do I wait for the next round, or do I go after the first, not first player marker, but basically you can ascend in the Federation track. And as you ascend higher in the Federation track, you're going to get bonuses, but it's also going to be turn order for the next round. And then that Federation track kind of resets. So I just feel like there's a lot of interesting decisions, and it's really this idea of pairing the worker placement with the card play and trying to build an engine, trying to build, ongoing effects that can really help you, and just really looking to synergize the cards and creating combos that work really well together, which anytime a game can do that and can do that well is a game that I'm going to enjoy. And so this definitely does that.
Well, it's an engine that sort of half cranks on some turns, right, with some of the infinite cards and the ongoing effects and some of the action cards. And then it's an engine that really cranks 3 times a game during those production phases.
Right.
So, right. Yeah, and that decision, that central tension, that central mechanic at the core of this is really interesting. You're right. That tension between do I try and match here? Do I have some sort of benefit ability that says if I don't match, I might even get a better benefit than what the card might give me? Do I try and get more cards in hand in order to try and get the right selection of things to play for future turns? But if I do that, am I giving up the opportunity to get this action spot I really need? So you have to kind of be watching what other people are doing, what spots they might want to take. And that constant rotation of cards kind of moving through your hand, plus the acceleration of the game from era 1 to era 2 to era 3, it all flows in a really nice way. To the point where, so the box says 40 minutes per player. I played this at 4 players, the max count for the first game. We were able to get it done even with a teach right about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
2 hours 45. Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, we cranked through it. And some of it is we had a group that no one player had a ton of analysis paralysis. There wasn't a ton of AP going on, but it's a game that is potentially very prone to AP.
Yes.
Because of the nature of the decisions you're making between the cards in hand, the action spots on board, how you want to spend your resources, how you want to manage resources, what do you want to save this for or not. Even despite all of that, it certainly doesn't feel as wide open as Terraforming Mars can feel. Terraforming Mars feels like there's just so many different strategies or approaches that literally game to game, no 2 games are going to feel the same in terms of those. And this just doesn't have as much of that open space for that kind of play. Do you think that was a good thing, bad thing?
I think it's a different thing, right? I think I agree with you that Terraforming Mars is definitely, it feels a little bit more like an open sandbox. And here, instead of having 3 eras of cards all shuffled together into one, because I think it's about the same number of cards, probably less than Terraforming Mars, but it only gives you access to a certain number of cards each era. So I'd agree with you with that. I got to say, though, I am impressed that you guys got it done so quickly. Our games, it took a while. In fact, Matt's new catchphrase after playing this game to Matthew was, "Your AP is killing me."
Ooh.
So games have gone long in this, and it's not a feel bad situation because you're engaged, and I'm definitely, like, even when it's not my turn, I know what I'm going to do on my turn, but I'm still double checking the math. I'm still making sure I carried all the ones to make sure that I've planned this out right. And it's one of those interesting games where first couple rounds you're just, I'm doing this and I'm pulling this lever and I'm putting this worker here. But by the end, you're like, okay, I have to do these 8 things in a row. I only have 7 actions to do these 8 things. Maybe I can do this instead. That might give me a draw. That will give me. It's like a beautiful mind. You're trying to get all the pieces into the right place.
Yeah. Now, Sean, both in terms of advice given me before the game and in researching stuff afterwards, there seems to be some thought that there might be a dominant strategy in this game. Did you find that going for kelp, was an especially dominant strategy in the plays you've seen?
I don't think so. I mean, no one was trying to necessarily. So okay, so let's talk about that real quick, right? There are 4 colors of buildings, right? So there's these green kelp farms, yellow desalination plants, and then the white research labs. And on each city, you're able to build up to 3 different buildings. Sometimes you can build a 4th building with the play of a special card, but basically you have to make a choice. Do I want a diversity of buildings? Because if you have a diversity of buildings, you're going to get more points at the end of the game. But if you are using similar buildings or the same building types in a given city, you're going to get better production. So were you finding that people were putting a lot of their kelp farms together?
This was a learning game for all of us. So there were some people who would put 2 upgraded buildings next to each other, but maybe I think that happened with 1 player. It's more that I've just, in terms of the advice that I received before I played this, and in terms of some of the forum discussions I've seen, it has been just universal that this may be a dominant strategy. But it doesn't appear to be from what you've seen, or at least your plays of this.
So what about it specifically? Because basically during the income, during when you're cranking your engine, if you have a kelp farm, it's giving you kelp, which makes sense. If you have an upgraded kelp farm, it's giving you a kelp and a victory point. But if you have 2 upgraded kelp farms in the same city, both of those together are producing 3 kelp and 3 victory points. So was it an idea that that's the victory points that you're generating is what?
Correct, because I think the other buildings don't get you victory points off of those. Upgraded tunnels can, symbiotic cities can as well, but symbiotic cities also cost you resources, whereas these kind of pay for themselves. Literally, you pay a kelp to get a kelp in production with those farms.
Sure. So I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't seen that. I don't know that in any of our plays I saw anyone intentionally going heavy on kelp, because certainly the other types are useful. So, the desalination plants give you money, and they also
Right.
give you biomass. And biomass is a pseudo wild resource. It doesn't quite count as everything. Your research labs, they give you uh, steel plasts, and they also give you science. And science you need to upgrade buildings to increase that output. And then your roads give you money, but they can also give you victory points if you've upgraded them as well. So I don't know. I mean, I there could be a dominant strategy. I haven't seen it in my 3 plays.
Okay. Got it. Good to know. Sean, is this innovative enough? Is this different enough from other things you see out there to have it justify its place to you?
So definitely, the thing I enjoy the most of this game, or one of the 2 things I should say, is the pairing the cards with the action and that interesting tension there. And then also you're deciding how you're building your engine. And there's 2 different engines you're building. Well, I guess they're interrelated, because you have your card tableau, and then you also have the production from your cities and buildings. And so, while it may not necessarily be incredibly innovative, I would say that it still does everything in a very satisfying way.
Yeah, I get a sense of that too. That sort of matching an action space with the card play feels, I don't know if it feels innovative, but it feels satisfying. I agree with you on that front. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. The one thing with this one too, the interaction comes in the form of worker placement, unlike Terraforming Mars, where there's sort of that global race feel. Even though it certainly didn't feel like multiplayer solitaire, because there were times, especially late game, when people would block each other or take a space that someone else desperately needed, and you knew they desperately needed it. So it's not the most interactive game, but it's also not completely solitaire, which I appreciated in this one too. So yeah, I enjoyed a good amount of the elements of it. I'd say, yeah, strongly in the like and pretty positive about it, but not in love necessarily. And we'll talk more about that in a bit.
So what are your thoughts then on the end game scoring? Because for the most part, you're scoring based primarily off of what you've built in your little network.
Yep.
So cities are worth a certain number of points, but again, you're going to score more points if you have diversity of buildings in cities. You're scoring points for if you've reached certain metropolises, which are basically these out of city network points where you can get immediate bonuses and also potentially points at the end of the game. There's also end game scoring cards that you can get some pretty hefty points in. So what are your thoughts?
So it felt a little underwhelming in a sense. I mean, certainly you're getting a couple of these things, but it by the end of endgame scoring, it was kind of like, oh, that's it? Oh, that's all you get? All right. The conversion is relatively simple. You dump all of these extra resources you're producing in for dollars, which convert to points, basically. Yeah, it sort of was. Some of these were like, oh, that could have been a bigger bonus. It would have been more interesting. Really, those endgame scoring cards you can get, the 3 credit cards, are worth pursuing because those can be really, really big difference makers. And I finished 3rd in my game, not by a lot, by I think 7 points. But if I'd had one of those, I could have definitely more efficiently used my funding, used my money in that towards the end of that game. So, yeah, I mean, I found it, for some reason, not completely satisfying. I couldn't tell you exactly why, though.
Interesting. I thought it was interesting because I couldn't necessarily tell where everyone's at. Kind of like in Terraforming Mars. I mean, you have some idea. Like Terraforming Mars has the Terraform rating, which is kind of the starting point for your points at the end of the game. This has just the victory point tracker, and you're doing things throughout the game that are giving you points. But there's a lot of endgame stuff that you're just not aware of. In my very first game, I thought I was killing it. I was so far ahead. I thought I had pretty decent endgame scoring. I had incredible production, which I was going to turn into just, feeding into points. And then I had some endgame scoring cards. And then even Matt, it was Matt that taught me the game. That's right. Matt taught me the game, I think. And even like Matt and I were talking, he's like, yeah, you got this. And then we did endgame scoring, and nope, he pulled ahead because in this case, it was the diversity of cities that really got him ahead, and he had some good endgame scoring stuff. And so I think that there definitely are divergent strategies here, because you can definitely do less production by building more diverse cities, knowing that you're going to get more points at the end of the game. But really, it's more so, more so than Terraforming Mars, I think. Big, I think. This could be wrong after this few plays, but I feel like synergy is much more important in this than Terraforming Mars. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you can get all of the right cards in Terraforming Mars, you're going to do really well. But I felt like you had to be hyper focused in this game.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. And if you fall too far off course, you might lose some efficiencies along the way. Yeah, I could see that for sure. How did it play the different counts? Did you try it at 2?
I did, and it was good at 2. I don't know that it's necessarily my preferred play count. I think that the board is a little weird, the worker placement options. But I think it's fine at 3 and 4. I think I'd lean towards 3, but I certainly won't turn down 4.
Okay. Yeah. And as we'll get to in the guild thoughts, I think there's someone who echoes your feeling on that account. Theme, did it feel thematic to you?
Yes, it really did. Again, kind of like Terraforming Mars felt thematic. This felt thematic. The cards for what they were named, for what the art showed, they just had their abilities made sense, right? And so it felt like you're building this network of cities. It felt like you are some quasi-governmental financier trying to get all the resources you need, all of the different assets and things that are going to help build this fledgling underwater nation of yours.
Yeah, well, and the thematic nature of it helped with the rules at one point, because the network building rules are not always so simple in terms of what scores when, what produces when, but it's pretty clear, for instance, with tunnels. If you build a tunnel to nowhere, if your tunnel is not connected to a city, which it can be in this game, and it has a chance to produce, it doesn't, because, hey, no one's walking through your tunnels, no one's using them, no one's kind of paying the tolls to go in between different places. So a lot of those thematic connections make sense. Oh, you're going to use signs to upgrade things. Yeah, you have better technology, you can make this thing work better. It all clicked together in a way that did feel pretty satisfying thematically. And it's always nice when you have something at the end of a game to kind of like, oh, hey, that's that little city I just built. So
one of the coolest cards, talking about theme, is the Biomech Construction Crew.
Oh, yeah.
So it's basically, there's this little mechanical box, and it opens up, and an octopus jumps out and uses its tentacles to pick up stuff and move it around. So somehow you're mind controlling these octopi, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's not the kind of theme where I was like consistently delighted by it and seeing little touches, but it's well integrated enough that it helps make what is a complicated game easier. So I think it succeeds on that front.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel pasted on.
I agree.
So let's go to the guild. Couple thoughts. Ian Kissel said, I played the game once and really enjoyed it. It had a mix of tactical and strategic, stuff on your own board and competition for worker placement spaces. It definitely gave you a feeling that you wanted to have done a lot more than you had already done all game, which is a nice sort of stress. It's held back by a few things. The player boards don't bother me, but they are thin. Stacking the little discs is more annoying. Worse, though, is that I think I would never play this at 4 or it would be too long, so it's really only a 3-player game. Overall, I had fun, but was not rushing out to get it, which would put it at a high 4, I think. And yeah, having played it at 4, it was not as long as I expected, but it was certainly a lengthy experience. And if you have any player who has a hint of AP, it can really be a long experience at 4. So 3 is pretty safe to stick to, I would think, if that's a concern of yours. It wasn't too long for me, and I'm more sensitive to that than maybe even Sean is.
Sure. And then Adam Dalton says, I played Underwater Cities only once late last year. It was really good. I haven't had the opportunity to play it since, but would jump at it if I did. I loved how you take it action and make it even better if you had the right color card. And yeah, that's one of the great parts about the game. So Alex, final thoughts. What are you thinking here?
Well, and I think you probably have a sense of where I am on this one. This is one that, It didn't blow me away as much as Pulsar 2849 did, but it's still one that I enjoyed. And for me, it's kind of the quintessential 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs to the Duchy. And I could see breaking this out again a couple more times over the course of the year. The card play is satisfying. You want to dive a little bit more into it, see what the different bonus cards are, maybe play with that Government Contracts Advanced Expansion. It is clever enough to be satisfying. I am certainly not as raving as a lot of people are about this. This would not have cracked my top 10 of last year, I don't think.
Sure.
So it is a like, not a love, but it's still one that I would put a pretty solid recommendation on. Keep in mind, this is a rating off of just one play, so I probably need more to really assess long-term replayability and some of those kind of things. But just off of an initial feel, we'll call it a preliminary 4.
And also keep in mind that we rate things here on the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale, where a 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun, and a 6 on the other end is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. Well, Alex, this definitely would have cracked my top 10 of 2018. And in fact, it would have cracked so hard, it would have reached all the way to the top. Because this is...
Whoa!
Yeah, no, this is my number 1 game of 2018, surpassing Space Corp, which is a 6.
Space Court.
Space Court. Surpassing Teotihuacan, which is a 6. Which means this is a 5 for me. No, I mean... It would have to be a 6, right?
I wasn't getting that vibe from you during the review, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I'm just an enigma, Alex.
You are an absolute enigma. There's no doubt.
No, you're right. I think I was a little subdued. It could be the allergies. It's been a rough week. It's been a really rough week. So maybe I'm not snappy. I'm not as snappy as I could be. But no, it's really good. For my experience so far, the game length may have held it back a little bit, but I know there's so much goodness there, and I'm here's the problem. It's a 6, right? But compared to, say, a Terraforming Mars, there's still a huge gulf between those.
Yeah,
which is kind of weird, right? It's kind of weird to wrap my head around that. But this is still a very solid 6. Well, I don't think you can have a almost a 6, right?
You can have a high 5. We've done high 5.
You have a high 5. It's not a high 5, but I'm saying you can't have like a low 6.
I mean, do you think this will genuinely crack your top 10? I think this will be more of like a top 25 game for you.
Top 25. Yeah. Definitely not a top 10.
That's fine.
So I guess if, I don't know, it just feels bad. You shouldn't have a low 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. But there's grades of 6. I can understand where you're coming from. For sure. There's games you love and there's games you love. And yeah, my sense of it, at least during the review, is this is a game you love.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine.
I love when games just stress me out. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just such a weird, we've talked about this before on the show. It's just such a weird thing for me to seek a situation where I get stressed out over making an optimal move and then kicking myself 3 turns later because, I should have done this differently. And there's something to this, like, I know what I'll do differently next time. You know what I mean? There's something enjoyable about that. There's something enjoyable about, like, thinking over a game after you've played it and just really itching to get it back to the table again. I would happily, we've done a review almost, and I would happily play this weekend. I'd happily play it next Wednesday because it is that good. It is super solid. So anyway, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Underwater Cities. A solid 4 for Alex.
Yeah, solid 4.
And a certain type of 6 for Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, finally this week, we're looking at a Dukes Quadruple Take with a couple of games that you were higher on than I was, Sean. Let's start off with Rising Sun, episode 172, Settlers of Japan. Sean, you gave that one a 5. You said it replaced Blood Rage for you.
Heck yeah.
I gave this one a 2. And look, the game certainly has merit, right? Certainly has merit, but it is just not a game I'm ever going to play again. And sure enough, since that review, I have not played it again. Sean, have you played it again?
I have. Yeah, I played just the one time since. But yeah, no, I'm going to keep this at a 5. And once again, a 5 is a great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it. It is just super solid. I was going back listening to our review when we were doing the show notes, and there's just so much to like about this game. It's dudes on a map, which is usually going to be a leg up for a game for me, for my taste. And then it uses a really interesting combat mechanic where you're bidding on different types of actions simultaneously and secretly, and that's just super cool. There's an interesting action selection where it's kind of I pick the action, and me and my ally get this bonus action, and everyone else gets a lesser action of it. I think it's great. I think this is a fantastic game, and when I say it replaces Blood Rage, it's kind of like the Terraforming Mars underwater cities. No, they're different mechanically, but there's sort of a similar itch that's being scratched by both of them. And so if given the choice, I'm going to pick Rising Sun every time.
Fair enough. Guild had quite a bit to say about this one. Adam Dalton said, Rising Sun was my number 2 game of the year last year. I own it, went mostly all in on the Kickstarter, and have played it 9 or 10 times since it came, so completely worth it. I enjoy best with 5 players so that somebody is left out of the alliances. Not nearly as diplomacy-like as I thought it would be when I purchased it, though.
Yeah, and I had even said, because that's where Blood Rage was supposed to be a spiritual successor to Risk. When Blood Rage was first being hyped up, it was a successor to Diplomacy, and I agreed. It's not. It doesn't have any sort of lineage in Diplomacy. It's more has lineage in Shogun, the original Shogun, part of the Milton Bradley series that came out in the mid '80s. But it's good. It's really good. And then BJ from Board Game Combo said, Rising Sun? How about Rising Sunburn? Am I right?
Tip your waitstaff.
Oh, BJ. The tea ceremony was mildly interesting. The combat system innovative but divisive, and there's just no reason to play this over Blood Rage. Plus, I hate the downtime in this game. BJ, you, sir, are now my arch nemesis.
Oh, it has been declared.
Yeah.
Dr. Gumbo versus lawyer Sean. The Esquire versus the Doctor.
He's also a lawyer.
Well, I know.
And technically, I'm also a doctor.
What?
Yeah, a JD is a Juris Doctorate.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough.
So technically.
Ian Kissel says, I like Rising Sun best at odd player counts, as I really like having one player with no alliance and thus free to betray to their heart's content. It's a fun game, although I feel the overproduction in this case, at least with the Kickstarter version, has significantly added to setup and teardown time more than the game itself. It's a streamlined experience that in the end almost felt like all the neatness was streamlined out of it. I would play again, but no one around me brings it out, and that doesn't bother me. A low 4.
Interesting. All right. Well, moving on to episode 173, The Ale Father. This is where we reviewed Heaven and Ale, and I gave this a 5. And I think what was most interesting to me was how relatively quick this game was, while cramming in a bunch of planning and decision making. It was the planning to time ratio was just super solid. Alex, you gave it a 4. You said that you'll keep it in your collection, but you're worried that it just may not have the staying power that you'd like it to have. And so what are your thoughts a year later?
Haven't played it since. I may or may not have it in my collection. I'm not even sure. It might be in a box in the basement ready to be listed on BGG, or I may have sold it or given it away. Maybe I gave it away during the Belong Somewhere Else in the Duchy when I moved in with Abby. I don't know where the game is, and I don't really much care. It's just one that has fallen off the map for me. I couldn't tell you why. I know for some people like Mike Fitzgerald, it's a game that they really just absolutely adore, and it's fine. I don't hate it, but it's still in that 3-4 kind of range. I think the reason it's more of a 3 for me is just more off of, I'll play it again, but I'm certainly not excited about it. I think the game is closer to good than it is to okay, but I belongs in the Duchy. I don't know if I care about having access to it. It was certainly one that when it was nominated for the Kennerspiel, I was surprised. I don't know why I was surprised, but I was very surprised about that. So I don't know. I haven't played it since, and I don't know when I will. Sean, have you?
I have. I've played it once since, and in fact, it's a game that I do think about a lot when we're coming up with games, and it's kind of something where if it were a right situation where I didn't necessarily have to teach it, like if if I looked around, there's 3 of us, and it's like, oh, do you know Heaven to Nail? Because maybe we're kind of limited on time. If everyone said yes, I'd be like, okay, boom, let's do it. So it's definitely been in the forefront of my mind. It hasn't just kind of slipped away like it has for you. And I think it's great. I'm going to keep it at a 5. A great game will really turn down a play of it. It uses the really cool mechanic of you're moving your piece around a track every round, and you can choose to jump ahead to a particular type of action. But by jumping ahead, you're foregoing all of the actions behind you, but maybe you really need to. You're purchasing these tiles that are these different ingredients. They're going to go on the light side or dark side of your board, and depending on where you put it, it's either going to get you those resources down the road, or it's going to get you money. Cool decisions, and just really a really tense game. Man, do I really want to jump ahead to get this particular monk that I need, or do I just want to pick up these little tiles in between? I really like it. I think it's solid. It's in the collection, and it's definitely going to stay in the collection. In fact, I'm going to try and get it out pretty soon because it's really solid.
Okay, cool. Well, Salty Dr. Gumbo, your arch nemesis and rival, said, oh, how I hate that scoring track. This was one of the highlights of my new-to-me plays last year. I need to get it back out, but oh man, I am so bad at this game. I get so caught up in all the gears and levers that I frankly just misplan the movement of all those scoring markers into positive areas. Fascinating Euro.
And here's what I'll say too. This was, with all of my issues lately with midweight Euros, this is one that kind of escaped the low Earth orbit of how I feel about midweight Euros recently. I think it's really good, and I'm good at the game too. That's always helpful.
It does help.
Like it just clicks.
I did pretty well at this game when I played it.
Well, hold on there, Sport.
Oh, okay.
You had the rules way wrong.
Well, yeah.
Ben Coberly, who is the very late recipient of Sean's Altiplano belongs somewhere else in the duchy.
Yep.
He taught you the incorrect rules to Heaven and Ale, where I forget what they were exactly, but it was some like super powered, like crazy thing. And you're like, oh, this game's really crazy. I have a score that's 5 times higher than what should be average. You don't remember that?
I do remember that.
Okay.
Anyway.
Moving on, Ian Kissel says, as a professional theologian that brews his own beer, man, what a perfect mix, right? I was excited when this game was announced, but as more details came out, it was clear the theme mattered about as much as most Kiesling games. The action selection rondelle is neat, it has good choices, and the scoring is cool but convoluted. Overall, a solid Euro that is just too bland for me. I would rate it a high 3. And it's interesting, I agree with just about everything he says there. Like, it is pretty bland. The theme is certainly pasted on, and the scoring is very convoluted. But for whatever reason, it doesn't, I would rate it higher than Ian would.
Well, that's our Duke's quadruple take. This one drops from a 4 to a 3 for me, stays right there at a 5 for Sean. That was going to do it, but before we go, we have some unfinished business from last episode and then some unfinished business from this episode. So episode 198, we normally do the runners-up for the top 6 episode titles at the end of each episode, but Sean screwed it all up. It's all Sean's fault.
No. When you and I were recording, before I left for Arizona Game Fair, we said we were going to record them at the end, and then we just forgot. It's a shared fault.
I recall a different conversation where you said you were going to do it out at Arizona Game Fair.
I don't recall that. Oh, actually, no, you're 100% right. Shoot.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, doesn't it, huh?
Shoot.
Yeah.
Because I wanted more time. No, wait, what, did I? Now I don't know.
It was so that the episode would kind of flow in order as opposed to be recorded in weird ways.
Are you gaslighting me right now, Alex?
I'm not.
You're gaslighting me.
I mean, I don't think there's any way of proving it, but I don't think I am. Anyway, it's not a big deal. Here are some of the runners-up for episode 198, and as a recap for that, this was one where we were talking about, what was the Lacerda game we were looking at? Oh, the thought was you might interview Vital Lacerda.
Oh, right. What shouldn't have happened?
Did you meet him? Did you meet him at any point?
Very briefly. He was super busy. Like, he was just from one thing to the next.
Sure.
Apparently, you had to set things up ahead of time. Who knew?
We're recording this on the same day, by the way, as On Mars released onto Kickstarter and is already killing it. And there's a ton of Lacerda fan folks out there who were super happy about that. So, Jimmy DM90 with Fly Like an Eagle Griffin. By the way, we were reviewing Wingspan, so you'll hear some birds, you'll hear some Arizona references, as well as some Lacerda references. So that's Jimmy DM90, Fly Like an Eagle Griffin.
And then Matt Walker suggested Drafted by the Cardinals.
Referencing the Arizona Cardinals NFL
Oh,
team.
yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
And also, a bird, because wingspan. Ossian Gurr said, bird. Bird is the word. I think primarily it's just so I could sing that.
Yeah, primarily. I think I've told you this like 15 times off air. It's Ocean Gur.
Oh, yeah, I'll never remember that.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry.
I'll correct you every time.
Very sorry.
Jonathan Dodd. I forgot about this one. It's really funny. You do it.
Jonathan Dodd came up with Vital Liberta.
That's so stupid. I love it.
If you'd interviewed him, that should have been the name. That should have been the name. Anyway,
okay.
It's too late now. And then finally, Ian Kissel with Roosters and Cardinals. Not a bad name. All right, now for episode 199, this episode's runners-up. Jimmy DM90 again with Come Ale Away, Come Ale Away, Come Ale Away with me, lads.
Frank Judnick suggested Sushi, Bushi, and Brewskis.
That's a good one.
Of course, Vladimir Sushi, the Bushi from Rising Sun, and then some nice cold brewskis for Heaven and Ale.
Yeah. Tim Tipks with Up, Up, and Way Down. Referencing the Way Down of Underwater Cities. Rising Sun? I don't know why the up goes in there. Anyway.
Well, rising, and then birds, they fly up, up, and away.
Oh, Rising. Oh my god, I'm such an idiot. Rising Sun. Yeah, okay.
Nate Simmons suggested Rub-a-Dub-Dub, Seppuku, and Suds.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
And then Philip Millman, my other arch nemesis and rival. By the way, if you're going to Dice Tower Con, sign up for the Baseball Highlights 2045 32-team tournament. Last check, we're at 17 teams signed up already, so it's going to be huge. It's going to be epic. Philip Millman helping organize that, won last year. He came up with Drowning My Troubles. Drowning My Troubles. And that is a look at your top 6 of the week. Sean, we did it.
We did it. We're back.
Hey, just a heads up for folks, don't expect anything big for episode 200. Sean, have you planned anything big for episode 200?
Oh, yeah, I got all sorts of things planned.
Oh, good. I don't believe you.
We've never done like a milestone. Like, it's always just been a calendar milestone.
Yeah, usually the calendar ones are bigger. But I think for episode 100, didn't we do something?
Maybe? I don't know.
I don't know. It feels like it's too late now. We're recording in 2 weeks.
You can't celebrate like the number and then the calendar. Like, you can't do both together. Like, that's just a bit too much patting ourselves on the back.
Is this year the 5-year, by the way?
Yes. Yeah. No, this will be our 5-year Duke anniversary.
What's traditional for 5 years?
Pinto beans.
I don't think that's true. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
A pinto bean necklace.
Okay.
So, Alex, if you were to make a statue of me out of a type of pasta, what type of pasta would you use?
Now, for the best detailed results or for the most delicious results or what?
No, you're gluing this pasta together. You're not.
Oh, so I'm like taking the pasta, gluing it together. How big of a can it be a huge statue?
No, it's gonna be like it's a statuette. It's gonna be like 8 to 12 inches tall.
Orzo.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use orzo pasta.
Orzo captures my essence. So you're aligning the type of pasta that best encapsulates my personality. And you're saying
I see.
orzo?
So you're basically asking my ice cream question in a really weird way.
Yeah, it's actually a Seinfeld reference.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, Kramer does a statue of Jerry out of fusilli pasta because Jerry is silly.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Awesome.
All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 199. Why don't you leave in the comments on the guild what type of pasta best encapsulates Sean? And if you say ravioli, because that's what Kramer would have used for George, then you get bonus points. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
Oh, and by the way, we called it Under the Influence. Thanks, Joe Rackstad. Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on April 18th, 2019. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers, LLC. can check out all their awesome titles at playtmg.com. Arcane Wonders, find games at arcanewonders.com, and learn more about Game Toppers at gametoppersllc.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!